oh, let's just throw out all bilateral symmetrical.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. Today is Wednesday. That means tomorrow's Thursday. 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Coffee and coaches conference call as usual. These calls are getting international. We got people from all over the world in these calls now, which is kind of cool. But great questions, great people. Grab a cup of coffee. Please join us at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, digging into today's Q&A. I was talking with Lalo. Lalo's got a kind of a complex situation here. He's training high-level sprinters. He's got to train in groups. It's very difficult to individualize things under those circumstances, and then situations will arise where it may be an exercise that is ideal under many circumstances now becomes problematic. There are always secondary consequences that we have to be concerned with, especially with athletes where we're taking away elements of behavior that may protect them from their superpower. So left to their own devices, athletes will progress in a certain manner, and the things that make them great can actually end up destroying them in the process. And so we have to protect them from themselves under these circumstances. And so this was a discussion that I think is going to be useful for a lot of people, because there's a lot of situations like this. It's like you have to make a decision as to how you're going to proceed. Is it safe to move forward with this type of an activity? Do we need to somehow create a substitution for an individual within a group? And so again, this is what was a problem-solving situation that again, I think many of us face. So thank you, Lalo, for this question. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so I don't delete it. We'll arrange that at our mutual convenience. Everyone have an outstanding Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., Coffee and Coaches Conference Call.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Awesome. 400-meter hurdler. He's very good at what he does, and he's been doing it for a long time. So I can't get him. I mean, he has a big anterior tilt and then low CR, but he still performs very well. The biggest problem that I have is when he goes to the gym and when we do bilateral symmetrical, like squatting, his lower back tightens up for about 2-3 days. So in my view, it's like, well, they have indoors coming in December, end of December, January. I don't want to waste time coaching a squat or some type of like deadlift for him to like be able to orient correctly his abdomen and make sure he doesn't overdo it. So I was like, well, the kind of the same question as Manuel. Can I just take off the bilateral symmetrical and just leave him with things like step ups and lunges and things that are unilateral and single legged? I don't think that at his level I would need to put too much volume on him, the bilateral symmetrical, but I don't know what you think about that.
You're asking a question with a maybe answer. My first question to you is, if you have an exercise that negatively affects him for a number of days after the fact, I would say that that's my first concern. Is like, okay, number one, maybe you do need to take it out, or number two, you need to give him a different activity where that doesn't happen and you're still benefiting from the force production capabilities of the bilateral symmetrical activity, right? So is it like, is he back squatting? Is he front squatting? Does it matter which one?
So we started when he was postseason, we started with a Zerker heels elevated and he was fine.
Okay.
Then we moved in.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the squat pattern that's the problem.
Right. Then we moved into a heavier loaded, but then we went on the ground and we did a high hex bar. So he was still, his arms were low to the ground. He was good. But when we started loading a little bit more weight, then it became a problem. But the weight is not the problem. He moves it very fast. He moves the weight very well. And in the moment, in the gym, there's no problem. I don't feel anything. A day after, 2 days after, it's like, oh, I'm tight. So it's like I haven't been wanting to front squat him or back squat him or anything like that, because I just don't feel like that's going to be beneficial, because it seems like he has the strength and power. It just doesn't seem to be put together, you know?
But once again, he's telling you what the consequence of that activity is. So there is a threshold. There appears that there's a threshold at which you can train him, and he does not have the negative consequence that's associated with it. Am I correct?
Right.
Okay. So that's the first thing that I would respect is like, okay, so even though he has the capability to produce a higher force, the way he's doing it is potentially detrimental, even though it doesn't visually represent it. He's coming in and he's saying, yeah, I don't feel good after I do this level of work. Like he's probably telling you, it's like, this is where I need to, like, you can take me to that level and then stop there, at least for now. Or
Right.
you do select a different activity. It's like, so you did the Zerchers and everything seemed to be okay there. So again, it's like that representation of position doesn't seem to bother him. So maybe the front squat becomes a better way for him to produce force at a higher threshold without the negative consequence. So I think it's probably worth the experiment, you know, to try it, because, and again, it's just an experiment. You be gradual, you get the representation of technique that you want to see, right? And you kind of go from there versus just saying like, oh, let's just throw out all bilateral symmetrical. And again, maybe you have to, I don't know. Again, I think this becomes your decision based on, you know, I hate to sound like a broken record today, but it's all about process. It's like you just say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what happened, right? If you can't, especially, and again, I realize that there's sometimes you just can't tell what the reason would be, but you do know you have negative secondary consequences here. You don't want to set the guy back 2 days every time you do a force producing workout, right? Like he's giving you a piece of information that's valuable. The hard part for you, and this is why you get to be the best coach in the world, is you have to make a decision. You say, all right, let's change this up because I had a squat representation before that wasn't bad. What's the difference here? Let's try another representation and see if it doesn't feel better. Because you give him a front squat, and maybe immediately he goes, oh, that's like, he could tell the difference between like the pulling the bar off the floor versus the front squat. Maybe he can give you better information right away. And then you say, it's like, okay, let's see what happens the next 2 days.
Right. Yeah. This is just one of those things where it's like, there's, 15 athletes all working out at once. And I'm thinking, I can't sit and coach just this moment. So I'm thinking like, all right, what would be best on the overall? But yeah, I'll work with him. Yeah.
I think you, number one, I think you stop doing the thing that sets him back. Right. For sure. So again, you either respect the threshold or you change the activity. And then what I would do is I would change an activity that would promote a similar representation that you got from the one activity that did not bother him, which was the Zercher. So again, maybe you got to do it heels elevated. You need something that's going to promote some measure of yielding activity posteriorly as he's performing the activity, right? So a front squat would do that. Maybe you got to go back to the Zerchers, right?
All right. Thank you, Bill.